Hey everybody, this is Perch. Well, I watched Wonder Woman 84 on HBO Max, and it's an interesting thing what's gone on with this movie. So I want to give you my feelings on it. A lot of other people already have. There's a lot of hot take videos, one direction or another. What's interesting is that everybody seems to be finding something they dislike about it. And then the people who just plain like the film, it's hard to believe them because they're posting things like I broke into tears several times during the movie. I, I have a hard time believing anyone broke into tears at this movie unless they were pretty drunk, or I mean they've got some real emotional things going on here during the holidays, and in which case I might suggest Elf. Elf is a way easier movie to kind of wrap your head around. If you're gonna break into tears, this is not a terrible movie. It is not bad. In fact, here's the fundamental kind of takeaway I got from Wonder Woman 84. It is a summer blockbuster movie. The difference is it was long delayed, so some anticipation, basically built up for it. It's the sequel to a movie that had more depth than I think people were expecting out of a superhero movie. It was really DC's kind of big hit that they had after a number of kind of confusing movies after the Nolan trilogy kind of wrapped up. It was they had the movies were kind of all over the place, and then Wonder Woman turned out to be thoughtful. It had some really great kind of iconic scenes, even though it had a pretty terrible third act, I think. But in general, it was better than people expected, so it raised the anticipation for what this film would do. But what's happened is it was supposed to come out in the summer, didn't come out. It was delayed twice, and then it finally just went out on streaming devices. And when you're at home and you're just watching this on your screen, you can just get up whenever you want. You can go get yourself another drink. You can go take a break, go to the bathroom, pause things. You can do whatever you want with it. And big kind of summer blockbuster movies hurt from that. The problem with any big blockbuster movie, not just this one, but any of them, is the more you think about them, the more you have time to kind of ask yourself some questions about it. It breaks down. Big summer blockbuster movies are about spectacle. They're not about kind of thought-provoking, in-depth, emotional kind of feelings. They're about, hey, look, here's some things over here, and now we're going over here, and look, this light is flashy, and so's this. And that's what Wonder Woman is. If this movie had come out in the summer, I think it would have been much, much better received. It wouldn't have had the anticipation buildup. It would have been put in the context of a bunch of other kind of dumb movies in the summer that really, didn't have a lot of depth to them. And it would have it would have been fine. Wouldn't have been like the best movie of all time, but as sequels go, it's better than your Ghostbusters 2. And well, I don't know about that actually, but the point is, you're not expecting, with Ghostbusters 2, you weren't expecting Ghostbusters. You're expecting a sequel. That's how sequels actually used to be. In fact, in many ways, if you remember the 80s and the 90s, the sequels were when people started to cash in on things, where a lot of the depth and kind of the charm and the original stuff went away. Sequels used to be kind of crappy. And then kind of the MCU and some of these other films built up these franchises, and then suddenly the sequels started to build on themselves and they got better. But by and large, sequels weren't great, especially from this genre. People like to point to Empire Strikes Back and go, see, no, that second film's going to be amazing. But that was the exception again. That wasn't the rule. So this movie, it's fine, is kind of the summary. It's not a great movie. It very much is more of a summer blockbuster movie than the first one. And there's a lot of things that make absolutely no sense. But you kind of expected that going in, or at least I would think. The problem that I have with the film, taking away all of that. So let's just assume, okay, we're going to set the bar a little lower because it was intended to be kind of a summer action, not a lot of depth movie. The problem I have is the same problem that I've talked about with Wonder Woman's comics, which is it always feels like the people doing the movie do not quite seem to know what to do with Wonder Woman. She's a pretty great, classic, iconic character, has lots of powers, has kind of a pretty diverse history and some things going on. There's a scene at the beginning of the film on Themyscira that is, it's fairly quick. It's showing this little kind of contest game, and it's showing that you can't take, it's meant to kind of give you the lesson that then the movie is going to play out, which is you can't take shortcuts to get to what you want. You got to do the hard work. And and that is really the lesson of the film. It does, after you get into the film, you find yourself wishing that they'd spent about 3 or 4 times the amount of on that island, and didn't rush so quick to the 80s. I hear this complaint from a lot of people, but it's true. I have a feeling like that, like Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns, who wrote directed this movie. I don't. It's hard to believe they lived through the 80s, or they did so much coke back in the 80s they've forgotten what the 80s were like. I mean, that wasn't. As far as I can tell, the 80s were about some shopping malls, crazy pants and clothing, and fanny packs, and that's pretty much what the takeaway was from the 80s. That was a very, I don't know, the nostalgia lens of this time period, like Stranger Things, which also leans way heavily into nostalgia in the 80s, manages to do a little bit better job of it. This was almost like scary movie level comedy of what somebody thinks the 80s are. But Wonder Woman is a hopeful character, is an iconic character. There's a couple things that were done very briefly in the background, like she was really taking great pains to save lives. She was not going to kill needlessly, except for that time in the Middle East where she has murdered a bunch of people. But that's okay. If trucks are flipping over, I'm sure they're fine. They rolled out of those trucks. But in general, they're showing some pretty good depth of her trying to save people or trying to protect people, and that's cool. I think it sets her a little bit apart as a hero. That's not something. It's kind of something unique to this film, but it was kind of tucked away in the side. The character and some of the scenes seem almost embarrassed to be doing that, as opposed to them being heroic moments. In the first movie, you had lots of her kind of saving innocents and doing those things, and it was heroic. It was a sign of additional strength, and it played off really, really well. And in this one, they do the same things, but almost kind of like they kind of tuck them away in the side. They don't want to, they really want to show Cheetah like breaking a column with her bare hands and smashing it up real good. And so as Diana saves people, it's it just kind of, they do that very quickly and very quietly. Donny Cates pointed out they don't call her Wonder Woman. They actually do, sort of. There's a police officer in the background that kind of says there's a Wonder Woman. I mean, you hear this kind of very briefly come out. Again, I don't know why they don't lean into it. You've got, Linda Carter, and you've got other elements kind of showing up in the mid-credit scene and other stuff. You've got plenty of cheese at this point. Why we're stopping short from saying it's Wonder Woman is a little bit. I mean. You do a whole like 5-minute gag montage of Steve Trevor trying on clothes and looking ridiculous. You could just call her Wonder Woman. It feels like, again, it's very similar to the comics, where it's like there's a certain lack of confidence with this character that they have to just keep piling stuff in. It's like, Wonder Woman, she's cool, but I don't know. We should make some really cool golden armor that she gets to wear. That will put her over the top as a hero. And she doesn't need the golden armor. The golden armor as a myth story is kind of, it's a goofy one. It's told kind of in the middle of the movie, like, hey, this character put on this golden armor and then kind of hunkered down in it to buy time, and so I'll wear it, and then immediately kind of Cheetah dismantles a lot of it, and I lose my helmet, and then it's unclear why I had it in the first place. Like, what was the point of the golden armor? Sell toys? Is that it? Just it's like, you have Wonder Woman and she's cool. You could just have her doing that. They did some neat stuff with the lasso in this movie that was not done as much in the previous one. That's cool. They did not do as much of having her just be strong. And then so part of this film, and for the majority of it, Wonder Woman is slowly losing her powers. And that's interesting to some extent, but it follows that Superman 2 model, I guess. But you needed, that you go over the top with this global threat, and you kind of pull your punches by having Wonder Woman kind of get progressively more tired. We wanted to see her go out and do some amazing things. For a summer blockbuster movie, there's a remarkable lack of Wonder Woman just really being heroic and doing amazing things. She's got little moments, but again, it's like you're watching this going, well, if this was a Superman movie or a Batman movie, we would have seen more things where those characters got the spotlight. And in this one, they kind of, try and tuck it in where they want to. They want to tell a story. It's a very confused film. They're like, hey, Steve Trevor's here, but now he's not. Oh, you got to wish. You got to not give a wish. Here's Max Lord. He's got some backstory, but he's a bad guy, but maybe not completely bad. And the cheetah just wanted to be liked, but then maybe she took it too far, but now she's okay, but maybe not. And it's like the film never really settles on what it wants to be. And so Wonder Woman feels almost like a side passenger in her own movie. And so you're left with something that, again, not terrible. It's just not good. It's just kind of out there. And I mean, two more things to hit upon. I mean, one of the things that a lot of people have commented on is that Max Lord is a Trump analogy. And I went looking for this. Patty Jenkins did say that she used Trump as an example. It would seem from the interview she was more talking about the Trump in the 80s, who was the businessman who was kind of bluffing to get real estate deals and had this personality type. She also says in the interview that the president character was not meant to be anything like Reagan, except it completely was. Like it was it's like, I'm not trying to make this political. It's like, yeah, but you cast a guy that looked as vaguely Reagan as Max Lord looked vaguely Trump. At the end of the movie, he's kind of washed in orange light, and some people have been saying, aha, this is another way it's getting at Trump. I think you kind of have to be going into this movie expecting to be insulted. If you're pointing that out. I mean, this is generic businessman lets power go to his head number 4. That's the problem with Max Lord, is as a nuanced character, as somebody who has a lot of depth to it. You don't see any of that depth here. And where they try and sandwich in some stuff like he's got a kid and he's trying to do right, but he's always been a loser, and you get this very brief kind of flashback where his parents, his dad was beating his mom and maybe him too, and other things. You get this stuff, but they don't really commit to any of that. It's just he is a over the top, grinny kind of villain. He looks like he's having a good time, but it's just he's kind of generic bad guy. And it was interesting seeing a lot of the reviews coming out of this movie of people saying it was wrong of you to make a Trump villain, and other people saying it was wrong of you not to make him more of, he should have been more of a Trump villain. And it's like, you guys all, if there's not one side we need to move on from Trump, it's like, you see, if people are seeing Trump in everything, including apparently the director to some extent. So I don't know. I mean, if you're watching this thinking you're going to get insulted because you're a Trump voter, you're not, unless you're really looking to get insulted. You may get insulted of just not getting a very good movie, but that has really nothing to do with Trump. The other observation I have about this film, just in general, is the challenge that these companies are going to have with streaming in general is that now that you're going direct to home, you're competing side by side with, say, Netflix and Amazon Prime and others. And Netflix and Amazon Prime with The Boys and some of these other shows, they have figured out how to make the model work for them, where their stories are way more decompressed. You got eight episodes. I mean, you look at kind of Cobra Kai and you look at Stranger Things and even to some extent Westworld, Game of Thrones stuff on HBO, and you see how kind of they pace the show out week by week, and in many cases it's too decompressed. But now you're going kind of head to head on their turf, on this home streaming format, and what you see is that a lot of the summer blockbuster type tropes and how you pace a movie, it feels weird. It doesn't fit anymore. And I think that's some of the reaction you're seeing is people who are used to like the Netflix model are kind of assuming the show is going to be twice as long. Because this one runs well over 2 hours. And if you think about that, that's 3 or 4 episodes of most shows. And so if it's an eight episode thing, you're talking about, this was half or a third of the length of, say, The Boys. And yet it felt far less substantive. That I think is going to be a problem. As we get into more of these kind of streaming shows, I think you're going to see a lot of kind of things that might have worked in the theater are going to be letdowns at home. Anyway, that's my takeaway. Is it worth watching? Sure. It's not terrible. It's not a bad film. It's not, the evil woke apocalypse, and it is not the shining example of all that is superheroic and amazing. Again, I think there's people saying I cried at every scene. It's like, get help, man. I'm sorry, but it's not bad. I think if you go into it and you say, this is key. If you want to enjoy this movie, sit down, get some popcorn, say, I'm going to watch this movie. It's going to be a little stupid. It's going to be like, I would be going to see Fast and the Furious 6, but I can't go to the theater, so I'm watching Wonder Woman 84. And that's what I'm in for. And just kind of turn off your brain, and you'll largely enjoy the film. If you're too hung up on, hey, the first one really surprised me and has some real depth to it, you're going to be disappointed. I think the other lesson here, though, is that maybe, just maybe, Jeff Johns should write comics and not write movies, because I don't know. Compared to the first one, the writing on this was clunky, and this was a Jeff Johns, Patty Jenkins joint here. And I don't want to see more of that. I have a feeling Johns could potentially be a bit of the fall guy in this one. If it's true that there are rumblings around Warner Media of Johns over Justice League and everything else, he needed this film to be more successful. And if it's not, I think people are gonna scratch their heads a little bit and say, hey, maybe your amazing screenwriting abilities leave something to be desired. I don't know. I foresee potential problems there for Jeff Johns. But anyway, it's a fine movie. If I was, on a scale of, like, if you're giving a letter grade, it's like a C. It's a C movie. If you turn off your brain and you just enjoy it as a spectacle, probably a B. If you're looking for something with some complexity and depth that's going to help move the DC universe forward, it fails at that. But it's fine. She does some stuff. I mean, the Cheetah character is. I mean, that's kind of a disappointing mess. I think this is a problem with superhero movies in general. It's like, you got to build up your villains to be super threatening and then resist the temptation to kill them at the end. Cheetah doesn't die in this one, but powers may or may not be stripped away. Max Lord doesn't die in this one, but his powers are gone ish, maybe. I mean, you could always bring this stuff back, I suppose. But anyway, it's worth a watch. Just don't go in expecting amazing art, and you'll be fine. But what did you think? Did you love the movie? Did you hate the movie? Do you disagree with everything I said? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media, or send me an email. It's all in the description of the video. Thanks for watching.